Okay, good evening, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us this evening on In Review, where we look at some of the top news. Good evening to you, Jacqueline, over there in Instagram, those on Facebook, and those on YouTube. Yes, let's get it on. Let me just, well, it's been today's the 9th of September, which is 2 days away from September 11th, 20 years on. So many activities which is happening in the world today. We're seeing the advent of Scotland voting for vaccine passports. We're seeing France, and you're seeing many things happening whereby the world is evolving right before our very eyes. And at the same time, what I always say, we've got to be critically thinking and thinking about what the future holds and what our say is. But first of all, before I go any further, let me just bring in my guest tonight, and I bring in Anthony Francis. Good evening, Anthony. How are you doing, sir?
Hey, good evening again, Stillborn. Good to see you again. Week goes quick.
Week goes very quick, man. Week goes very quick. And welcome to Bishop, Lord Almighty. Sorry, Gary. How are you, sir? Irv?
Yeah. I'm all right, sir. I'm
You're
all
right.
right. I'm all right. It's a pleasure for me to sit with the Honorable Anthony Francis.
Well, I can say without a doubt that sometimes men might not recognize that a woman has a haircut. I recognize that you have had a haircut, Gary.
Yeah, yeah. I'm trying to be accepted by Anthony there. I try.
Wow. What can I say? What can I say? Anthony, you're the man. You're the man. You know.
Yes, man.
Well, listen. How's the week been, guys? How's the week been? I mean,
Well, it's been a challenging week.
mm,
It's challenging insofar as I've had some family issues. My son's birthday. My daughter's starting back at school in her
yeah,
new role as head of economics. So really both proud as well as anxious for my granddaughter who also starts secondary for the first time.
awesome. That's great.
Great, great.
And and Gary.
Well, we're having to navigate some issues also. Probably not as grandiose as Anthony, but we're on the land of the living. And the thing about it, if I can start things going a little bit, and I know that you, Silborn, you've got the steering wheel firmly in your hand to
Yeah,
guide your program. Obviously, today, 9/11, it's something which the world has been gearing up towards. It's the anniversary on the day of whatever happened 20 years ago. So
yes,
we're having to tackle that, even though it happened thousands of miles away, but it's something which has affected every human being that was alive then, and even those who have been born during this 20-year period, not having
yeah.
anything to do with anything, it's affected them. So, you know,
Well, that's a very interesting way to start, and I believe we can start on that point because even though I mentioned the 9/11, that is 2 days time, and of course we won't be able to talk about that till the following week. But 20 years from now, 20 years to now, what would you say? What's your reflection, Gary? Let's start with you. What's your reflection on September 11 and the advent of Afghanistan, which we have been talking about?
mm, mm.
You know,
I remember I remember the day in as much I used to work for a finance company called Victoria Mutual
mm,
Finance, working in the offices in Birmingham, and I remember the day when we were told that a plane flew into one of the towers in New York,
yeah,
and I stood. I from where the office is, if I remember correctly, I stood at the window because Dudley Road, if you know Birmingham well, and Dudley Road is one of the main shopping roads in Birmingham. A lot of West Indian as well as Indian shops and businesses are located. And funnily enough, the whole area just became quiet. It's as if all the hustle and the bustle of life just calmed all the way down as if nothing else happened, nothing was happening. And the whole world, I just felt the whole world just stopped. For me, on my reflection, it was a day that I don't think we'll ever have another day like that for a long time. If there's any other day that's going to come, I don't know what's going to top that.
Yes,
It'll be something that would have to be really devastating, that really is going to have such a dramatic effect on the lives that were alive then and on myself, really.
yeah. And Anthony, what's your take on September 11th? A brief reflection.
Yeah, well, for me, a personal reflection is, I visited, well, not visited, I used to actually have business meetings in the Twin Towers, many years back in my early days when I was working for a telecoms company. And so for me, it was just surreal to see these two iconic buildings be leveled in that way. So, and I remember when the incident happened, we were all in the office and immediately the cameras were put onto the channel and we saw the planes hitting the skyscrapers. And I think it was, first of all, it was one of disbelief that what was taking place. Nobody could really believe what we were watching. It was almost like Gary said, time stood still because we were watching an aeroplane that we normally see in the sky and take for granted being targeted at a building. So I think my immediate reflection is one of sorrow that this incident happened at all in the first place. And like Gary says, I hope going forward that we will never see such a repeat of such an incident that will be long in the conscience of people who it affected both then and now.
Yes. And welcome, Dr. Burton. How are you doing, sir?
I'm good, thank you for asking. Yeah, all good. Long, exhausting day at work, but glad to be here.
Well, you're looking very fresh, I must say, David. You're looking very fresh and awesome. We were just talking briefly, just to start the program in regards to September 11th, because we won't be able to touch on it till next week and just 2 days before. What's your take and your reflection 20 years on?
Yeah, 20 years. It's a long time ago, but it's still fresh in the memory, I'm sure, for people who recollect that day. I remember, being in school at the time and then hearing about this. And it was a real shock. And the first thing that really got to me was thinking about family. Were they safe? Were they okay? And phone lines were all down. It was really difficult to get through. But that evening, we found out that our close friends and family were fine. We'll have had, we all have set up camps in our respective parts of the world, but we have bases that we can touch on. And I think that most people will have family and friends in the United States and obviously in New York as well. So that's where my mind really goes to when I remember this particular period. It's that shock. Obviously, it's the fear that something's happened to a loved one, and then it's the reflection that obviously, even if it didn't touch you personally, it would have touched persons around the world over. Flying was never the same again, and will never be the same again. It was very easy. I remember as a kid going into the cockpit of planes and taking pictures with the pilot while the plane was up in the skies. But that's just very, very rarely an eventuality nowadays. And I think that's a minor point, but it's a shame that we've had to now take this stance of how we can fly. But yeah, I think that's the thing I will say. Obviously, all those lives that have been affected and touched, and I think we all remember that. I think you're on mute, Sylvan.
My apologies. Yes, I'm on mute. I'm just bringing James Singleton here. You said hi to you, David. Hopefully nothing ever matches that, and it's truly devastating. Subsequent behavior, it was an extremely peculiar day. I watched the second plane hit live. Tremendous failure of what was a pointless war where the entire point was lost. I mean, what James is talking about, the pointless war now, because we are seeing 20 years on, and I guess when September 11 comes, there's going to be a slight sour taste. Or you think, Anthony, will be in Americans' mouth in light of what has happened with Afghanistan?
Well, yeah, I mean, unfortunately, it's a sour taste for everybody involved who have lost lives, those who are now living with the consequences. And as you say, in regards to Afghanistan now and them pulling out, and I would think some would say that the job that they went in to do was not complete. Some would say that it was complete because their initial mission was to go and find bin Laden. They found him, but they then decided to occupy the country to try and rebuild, and it hasn't gone the way they wanted it. So I think there will be bittersweet memories and people's recollections. But I think also, as I've mentioned just a minute ago, I hope it will allow people to reflect and realize the real foolhardiness of war and what war does. I mean, sadly, war does not really solve any major problems. In a sense, it causes more death and destruction than it seeks to try and address. So I really hope that when they do reflect on it, the Americans and the politicians who were involved at the time, they will see and maybe think to themselves they could have been done a better way at the time, maybe. But with the benefit of hindsight, they did the best that they could.
Yes, yeah, and just say hi to those on Instagram. Hi, Philip Bickle. If persons can just say like, what was it at September 11? Because we all know what we were doing at that point. What was it like for you at that point there? A bit like Princess Diana death, John F. Kennedy, if person was alive at that time. For me personally, I just got married and I just came back from Jamaica and we were just moving in, and then we saw the plane. I was like, cool. It's always a movie, and then we said, hang on a second. It just unfolds. And I guess if we didn't leave Jamaica by that time to come here, we would have been stopped, because you remember all planes and everything affected that time as well, But while we're just on this topic, and we just move quickly on to Afghanistan, new developments in Afghanistan whereby the cabinet has now been formed, no woman, and also one of the top guys is one of $5 million is on his head as a bounty from America. What do you guys think about that with Afghanistan? I mean, they're moving on. They're really getting ready for governance, isn't it, Gary?
Well, I mean, our conversation really. If you really look at our conversation, it's a continuation of last week in the sense of leadership. Is there a vacuum? Or if there's no vacuum, why is the leadership in the way that it is? And we can see, obviously, that leadership begets leadership. In that, I mean that the leaders that we have, or that they have now in Afghanistan, has been or were, to some extent, 20 years before, were very much more, or not more, they were very much groomed by the West, weren't they? Even though they were fighting Russia and such, but yet it was the CIA, so to speak. I hope my colleagues can and will correct me if I'm wrong here, where the CIA kind of groomed them to be where they are today, even though they fought against them. But to put a $5 million bounty on a person's head that you yourself, let us say you yourself, helped to train so much years ago, because they know about this guy. It's not that he's come up in the last 20 years and he's doing what they're doing. I mean, they knew about him even before now, because they've helped them to be where they are. It's only that he's turned the tables on them, and he's now not a friend but an enemy of the United States.
Yes,
so I think that Afghanistan, I don't know how well they're going to do, even though they're moving on, and I do believe that they should have at least a few women amongst them, but that's not going to happen.
Yes,
that's not going to happen. I can't see any good thing coming out of Afghanistan. Really, I can't see it.
Do you guys think, and I throw this one to David and Anton, do you think that somehow there could be some propaganda? When I say propaganda, everything we are hearing is from the West, the Western media, in a way. And one guy, I was speaking to a taxi guy. I went to pick up my car, and he was Pakistan, and he said, "Listen, man, these guys have been living like this for thousands of years. Women has wearing the burqa for thousands of years." He said his wife actually still wear it in London, even though he said to her she don't have to wear it. Is it that sometimes the information that we are hearing could be somewhat propaganda to a bit because it works in the interest of the West? I just throw that one out.
I wouldn't. I mean, I can't really say, but it depends on what's being said in regards to when you use the word propaganda. There are facts here. So the fact is that there are no. It seems to be that there are no women within the government, and that's a fact. But it's the way that you look on that. So
Yes.
in regards to how we were looking at it in this particular part of the world, that looks sort of abnormal to us. Not sort of. It does look abnormal to us. But in that part of the world, it's somewhat accepted, as you said. It's part of the way that things have moved for years, many years. You could say part of their society, and so to change that or to expect that societal change, I think is a moot point. Things may well change over time. Obviously, societies do change. People do mix. People do blend, and ideas do get exchanged and change. But at the same time, I think it would be wrong of us to say that they need to act in a certain manner, and in the same way, it would be wrong of them to say that we should act in a particular certain manner. We all have different societies around the world. And I'm not saying that in this instance, this is a perfect example of that, but at the same time, it is an example. And I think that for us to expect any differently, I think would be wrong. I think that's just the way that they operate. In that particular example, when we talk about government.
Yes, yes. And Anthony, in wrapping up on that point.
Well, I think nothing's really changed in terms of how the Americans are actually addressing this. I mean, you have to remember that Bin Laden was also somebody who worked with the Americans before he then turned to be hunted. So
Yeah.
it's history repeating themselves, and sadly, it's my operandi mantra that I always like to use, that no lessons are being learned.
Yes. Yes, that's very interesting. Well, well. Anyway, I think it's going to be what should I say? Not to belittle the moment, but it's going to be a long series when it comes on to Afghanistan. So we'll watch space on that one. I want to move on quickly on to a key topic which came up this week. And if you see these two gentlemen, they are black. And these two gentlemen are different. One is into rugby, if I'm not mistaken. One is a football. And what we have is the Gavin Williamson, who is the education secretary, actually confusing them. Many people are asking for him to go. But really and truly, guys, is it a genuine mistake that he made a mistake confusing them?
This is just a continuation of Gavin Williams' incompetence. I mean, you have to remember, Gavin Williams is actually not wanted by anybody in his own party, let alone probably his own household. So,
that's a very powerful one.
I think this is another gaffe on top of a gaffe that he's made, and quite frankly, in the cabinet reshuffle that's coming up, I'd be absolutely astonished if he wasn't shown the door.
David?
Yeah, I can't really add more to that, other than to say, whilst I think if you of all the gaffes that you could make, I think we can actually laugh at this one a little bit. Yes, we can go into the idea that this is this one person acknowledging another black person as somebody else, and it's the connotations of that. Yes, I get that, but I think that the thing for me is the memes and the jokes that have spun out from this. There was a picture of him talking to somebody with locks, and underneath it said, "I've just met Bob Marley." And obviously the picture's just taken like last week. I just want to laugh at this moment. I think there are other gaffes that he's made, and I do think there's serious problems, unfortunately, with the position he finds himself in, and we'll see at the cabinet reshuffle, as Anthony just remarked on. But I've got to really take this moment to laugh at this. Itoje laughed at this in terms of his Twitter tweet about him not being mistaken as Mario, because it was referred to as Mario. It's Maro. And he to say that he's not Rashford. Sometimes you've got to laugh at these things, but I do think it's part of it. Unfortunately, part of a series of gaffes that have been made. And yeah, I don't think he should resign because of this one thing. I think there are other things that you could particularly pull him up on. But yeah, it's not a great look for him, and I don't think, as Anthony said, that he'll survive the next cabinet reshuffle.
So before I go on to Gary, so if I capture you right, David, what you're saying is that it's a laughable moment. It is not like an isolated issue for him to go, but if he's to go, he's to go based on other factors. But this,
I think so. I don't think this
Yeah.
is the nail in the coffin. I think he would probably have gone if he hadn't done this anyway. But the thing here is, I think sometimes you've got to have. I'm not ignoring the seriousness for some people in this regards to what he said and what's transpired, but at the same time, I do think you've got to have you've got to enjoy some moments in life, and I think this is one of them to put out there and say this is a hilarious moment that he's just gone off and confused two completely different persons.
Yes.
Talking about the only similarity here is that they were talking, if I'm not mistaken, I told you was talking about computers in schools. So the school was the link here, but nothing else. They've got two different projects, two different people, two different sports, two different black men doing their thing in their respective sports. So I don't know how he confused the two, but he obviously did. And you know, let's take it as a laughable moment. You know, like I think Rashford would and Itoje have done so themselves.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's my point. That's my thoughts.
Gary, do you think it is like what what Anthony and David has said? It's like the garnish on a nice meal that highlights it and say this is the time now. As Anthony said, it's the time now for him to go.
Let me say this, right? I'll address all of your questions if I remember all of them, right? I'm glad I'm on Anthony's side because whatever he said there, right? I'm happy that my hair's cut. I'm relaxing in my own space, and I'm on Anthony's side. I fully understand with what the doctor has said, and I agree with him. It's a laughable, but there's a serious side to this, and I think for me, I think we need to look at that.
Yeah.
They're cheeky. They're cheeky. He is not only speaking for himself, but he's speaking for the rest of those that stand with him, in the sense that it has been said, even if in flippant ways, oh, you look just like the rest, just like everybody else. I mean, you know, I could be walking down the road, Anthony is walking on the opposite side, you know, they're looking for me, but yet they run over and arrest Anthony. Why? Because we all look alike. That's what they're saying. We all look alike, and they want to flippantly just brush it away as if, well, it's a mistake. It's not a mistake. We've got to. I think we as a people, sometimes we look at things and we laugh. Yes, laugh if we must. But we've got to send a signal to these people, right? As intellectual that they say they are, that whatever they say, we know what they're saying. We are just like them. We understand what they say, and we are understanding what they're trying to communicate. There is distinction between these two individuals. Marked distinctions. And everybody, the whole country, knows Marcus Rashford. They know what he's been doing. They know exactly how much he has been contributing to the schools.
I think that's an indictment on Gavin, because he helped a lot with the education, isn't it?
Exactly. So how can you then look at Rashford and look at the other gentleman and make that statement? I mean, no, you don't. If the tables were turned around and when I say we, a high profile, intelligent, well-placed black man made a statement of such magnitude, do you know how much that particular individual would be buried? Do you know what they would want of him?
Yes.
Believe me, come on. I think we as a people, we've got to begin not to lie down anymore and brush things aside. Laugh if we must, I understand. but let these people know that what they do is not acceptable. Look at the MP, right? She got up and she spoke her mind, as we said, yes, and that's okay. There are rules and regulations, but I'm quite certain that in the past week or two, there has been an MP in Parliament who has brushed very close to what
Dawn said,
and nothing has been said.
yes.
So I just think that we as a people in this country, we've got to wake up, man. We've got to wake up and not just say something to brush it aside, and then Wednesday comes and it's no, I'm not
Yeah.
I'm not a radical. I'm a minister, I know, but sometimes we've got to call a spade. We have to.
Yeah. Well, in wrapping up on that point, they said the cabinet minister who is widely tipped for demotion at a long-awaited reshuffle. Some Westminster insiders think could take place on Thursday, which would have been, I guess, I don't know, maybe that's next week Thursday. Made the apparent gaffe in an interview with the Evening Standard. So I think there should have been some reshuffling coming up soon. Just moving away from that quickly, unless anybody else wanted to say anything on that point.
Well, one question, just a point here. If Gavin has to be disciplined, then what about the Home Secretary? What about I've forgotten his name. The other I can't remember him.
Yeah,
can't remember the name. But you see, you just can't discipline one or shuffle one out when calls for different cabinet ministers has been called for demotion or removal, and the prime minister has not done anything. If you're going to move one, move everyone that needs to go. Get rid of them.
Well, I think they're in the process of a reshuffle there. So let's hope that something happened and they've listened to Anthony and act accordingly.
Yeah, well, I was going to say that. Put Anthony up there.
Yes. But Anthony keep running away from driving trucks and from doing other things, so who knows, maybe he might be going up there, Let's move on quickly because Cressida Dick is also on the chopping board as well, if that's the best way of saying it. She's the Dame Cressida that became the first woman to lead Metropolitan Police when she was appointed in 2017. And I think they're now saying that they're accusing her of presiding over a culture of incompetence and cover-up. Anthony, yes, start. We're back again on this point.
Yeah, well, it's just a revolving door here. Sadly for Cressida Dick, this is as Gary was saying. If you've made one gaffe, but in her case, it's gaffe after gaffe after gaffe, and she has presided over a police force that we know is been labelled as institutionally racist by the Macpherson report, but also her involvement in a number of very high-profile cases has been wanting. And to be honest, I'm surprised that she hasn't been sacked before for the various incidences where she has been in charge. Don't forget, she was in charge of the Menendez case where he was shot and killed.
Yes.
And
she gave the orders. I think she gave the order, isn't it?
She was in charge then. She's been the person who has been involved in the Windrush, in those cases where I mentioned those 5 gentlemen had their cases. I think they were trying to get their case heard for 50 years. I mean, Dick has just presided over problems after problems, and don't get me wrong, the job she does is very challenging. So I'm not going to say that it's an easy job, but I think if you're in such a high-profile position and you make so many mistakes, I just think it calls into question your judgment and your ability to do the job that you're in charge of.
Yes, fair enough. And David, what do you take about this? I mean, it's coming for the chopping board for Cressida Dick. It's like it's time for her to be reshuffled around.
Well, it seems like she's not going to be reshuffled around if she's given sort of a 2-year extension. And so
Yeah.
I think that, maybe it boils down to who would be the next effective person to take that position and what change could they make in that particular position. Those are questions that I would probably want to ask the question, that want to raise as a question. And I don't know what the answer to them is. And the other thing is to go with the status quo. If the powers that be are happy with the way that the police force is currently conducting activities, then she will be afforded those 2 years. I agree that she's presided over those particular instances. What I would say, and I have no affiliation with Christa Didick or whether or not she keeps a job or not, but what I will say is that I think during the course of time, each commissioner does have to preside over very difficult choices and difficult decisions. And I'm not saying that she's made right choices here, but it's a difficult job to sort of to preside over, and it's judgment calls as well. So whilst I'm now defending her actions, I think that things will transpire over time that will be positive, and things will not be so positive in the outlook of them. There's no doubt that Windrush scandal was a huge one, but for me, it was a very historic scandal that was based on many years of problems and governments that just weren't effective in terms of the way that they handled the cases of persons coming over from the Windrush. So there's lots of different examples you could poke holes in, but I think that quite obviously the powers that be are quite happy to go with the status quo.
And Sir Gary?
I don't really want to say much on this one. I'd like to I will leave the Honourable Doctor and Anthony Francis to say what they've said and to leave it at that.
Yes. Okay. Let's leave it at that one there. David, let's go on to the medical section. A record 5.6 million waiting for routine surgery in England. Are we at the point where we're seeing attention to starting to reduce this now? I mean, COVID, I don't know. My perception of COVID now in the UK, based on what I'm seeing, is that I think we have turned a very positive corner. And I think things are progressing, like the worst is behind. And therefore, there's a time now to look at all these outstanding operations. What do you think? Is my deduction correct?
I think partly, I'd agree partly with what you had to say there. I think that COVID is something that obviously is affecting us in a different way now than it was 18 months ago. We're in a completely different position. And I agree that I think we're in a position of positivity looking at that outlook. When you talk about recognizing the issues at hand now, I don't agree with that. And the reason I don't agree with it is because these issues were pre-COVID. COVID has just shone a light on many things, and shone a light on this particular issue in itself. Waiting lists have always been an issue. The way that we've handled them has not been the best. And I think we could do more to handle it to a greater degree. When I say we, I'm talking about obviously government directive here to try and tackle the rising costs of the social care bill, and the help and acknowledging the fact that people need help towards the latter part of their life, without sort of depending on and reducing all of their finances that they've accrued over the course of their life. And they may not have accrued any finances, need that financial support. And that has been lacking, unfortunately. And to look at that now with this particular policy, I don't think, when I say this particular policy, I'm talking about the national insurance increase. I don't think that's the long-term aim here. It's not going to solve the problem. Throwing money at this particular problem is not the solution. We need to find more effective ways of people being able to, number one, in the long term, being able to look after their financial affairs and look after their health going forward. We need to find more effective ways of getting and retaining staff within the health industry. And I don't think that's been great. Brexit has not helped with that particular problem, because we've had mass number of people leaving to leave the NHS and leave the healthcare sector. So the recruitment and retainment in NHS is not great. And then we've got other policies that seem to be floated around in terms of now making it potentially a mandated effect that you have to have the COVID vaccine. That's going to have raise particular concerns in regards to, again, retaining the workforce. I completely appreciate the complexities of the matter with regards to having people who have been vaccinated, but mandating it means that you're going to force and drive people potentially out of the workforce. There are lots of different issues at hand here, Silborn, and I've for the past few months again been banging on about this. That I don't think we've really put our finger on the prize, and the prize is every other health condition outside of COVID, because they're not going to go away. They will never go away, and we've not really had any focus on that, and that's the problem. When you look at it now and just say this is rising, okay, we'll throw some money at it. That's not going to be the solution. It doesn't help to create the two and say, okay, we've got more money, because in the eyes of the electorate, they think that, okay, we've got some more money in the NHS. It's going to appease the whole situation, and it'll be brilliant, and we'll be back to square one. But we won't, unless we really recognise the problems that existed before COVID and will continue to exist if we don't get our finger on it.
And Anthony, what's your take on that from a logistic aspect of it?
Well, I think there's maybe one or 2 points I'll just quickly touch on. I mean, David's right in that throwing money isn't going to solve the problem, but unfortunately, money is a key point here in terms of we saw what the nurses were offered, 1%. That was a factor which has led to a number of nurses simply saying, I don't want to stay in the profession anymore. If you don't pay people decent money, then they'll go elsewhere. I mean, it's also don't forget the bursary situation. People who are training to become nurses have got to pay this bursary. So they haven't made it easy to go into a profession that doesn't pay very well. So I understand on one hand that we can't throw money, but at the same time, we do need to address some of the issues around social care and the NHS. And yes, of course, the backlog that David talks about has been there before. And, we want to try and address that as quickly as possible. I think, in a way, if I'm really honest, the NHS is just simply a victim of its own success. We're the only Western world where we offer a point of service where it's free. And I think, sadly, the expectations on it is that it will be there and do everything for us regardless. And, sadly, as we've seen with other countries, in particular the United States, it costs, as we're seeing here now, it costs a lot of money to manage the NHS. And, yes, the NI increase is a welcome addition to maybe try and reach some of the backlog. It certainly won't address all, but it might address some of the issues around social care. I don't know. I haven't studied it in detail. But I think it's a step in the right direction, because clearly over the last number of parliamentary governments, they have failed to make any headway on this whatsoever. So for once, I've got to give Boris Johnson some credit for at least tackling it. But I do believe that the real issue is because the Chancellor simply said to him, we cannot spend any more money because we've already got this massive debt which has arisen from COVID. We need to try and get some money back if we're going to try and address some of the social care issues. So it's a multifaceted problem that doesn't have one solution.
Yeah, Gary, you want to pick up on that point regarding the beds?
Yeah,
and the record of 5.6 million waiting for routine surgery. Anybody in your fraternity, like in the church circuit, people are waiting to go to hospital?
Well, yeah. I mean, there are a few in my locality as well as nationally, and in the region where we are. There are people who are waiting to be addressed. Even myself. I mean, I tell you how bad it was. I made an appointment to see a doctor.
You're seeing a doctor now. David is there. But anyway, keep going now.
I made an appointment to see a doctor. On my way, this is about a couple months ago, on my way to the doctor's appointment, I got a text saying, we've had to cancel it. And we will then get back to you because of a doctor shortage at the surgery. So I said, okay, fine. All right. Then a couple weeks later, probably a month or so, I get another text telling me that I must call back to the surgery to organize another appointment. which of course I'm saying no, I'm not going to do that. I mean, they canceled the appointment that I called in the first place and told me that they were going to rebook me. Then they're telling me to call back to make an appointment, and I said no. I mean, I appreciate everything, and yes, I when I listen to Tony's comments there, yes, I support the NHS and everything that it has to do, because again, to get a 1% rise from the for the nurses or those, I think that's a slap in the face anyway, because every Thursday we were told to stand outside our doors and do a hand clap to support the nurses and those in the health service. Then all of a sudden they get a 1%, which is, I mean, no, I don't think I would never. I don't support that. But then again, yes, the burden is there because the government has had to do a lot of spending that they didn't have the money probably that they never had in the first place. So they've got to now replace that by raising taxes, which of course I think if anybody is reasonably there, I think people did expect a rise in taxes, at least to readdress or to address the national debt, which is the most it's ever been, I think, in the life of the United Kingdom. So yes, I applaud the Prime Minister for doing what he did, at least for addressing it. But then again, as Tony has rightly said, it's a problem because it's not just one issue.
Yes,
it's a multiple,
multifaceted. Yeah. On that point regarding the NIS, and we can shift on to that. And because this is a combined sort of topic here. National insurance increase, was this a master stroke or was it a death knell for the government in a way? Because they are saying now the promise, and they have been using clips of different promises. Read my lips, no increase in tax. Read my lips. Politicians always say that. But I always say at the same time that politicians can say something at that moment in time, but circumstances that present itself may have to get them to revise that. I mean, COVID is something that has completely shaken the fabric of all countries at this time, financially, economically. Anthony, I bring this back to you, and we're in the same region there. And I know you're critical of the Prime Minister, and I think you gave some sort of credit there. This move by the NIS, people are actually saying that younger people are paying a lot, while a lot of older persons are also. I don't know if you're in that category, Anthony. You guys are okay in a way, but other people are paying for the future for elderly persons.
Well, okay, look, two things on this one. I mean, I did say I give credit to Boris Johnson and the Chancellor for at least coming forward with a solution, because at the end of the day, this has been kicked into the long grass for so long that somebody had to finally come forward. He's come forward and he's put forward on the table a 1.25% increase, which I think, as David has just commented on, the money isn't necessarily going to solve the problem, but it's a step in the right direction for social care. Yes. I think in terms of is it going to be a factor that affects the government? I don't think it is. I think, in fact, it will be to their advantage when it comes to any elections, because they'll say, look, we're actually trying to address social care. And let's be honest, social care is something that's going to affect us all anyway. We're all probably dealing with social care issues for our loved ones right now. I mean, my father is 98 and actually is getting the sort of social care that comes from the benefits of the government. I mean, fortunately for him, he doesn't have to sell his home. So when they say it's the young people paying for the old, then what they fail to say in that statement is that it's the young people who are also supporting their elderly parents, so that because don't forget, it's the young people who will eventually benefit from their parents' property anyway. So
that's a very good point, because normally, as you rightly said a while ago, what was happening is a lot of older folks have to be selling their property to maintain themselves. But what you're saying now is that they can keep the property, and the younger folks are going to benefit from that. That's a good point. David, even though you touched on this point already, the move by the government politically, is it a benefit?
I agree totally with what Anthony just said regarding the national insurance increase. It was something that needed to be discussed or put forward as a potential solution. But I particularly don't believe that is a solution to the crisis that we find ourselves in. You're right, we've been cooked into the long grass, but I don't think, for me personally, I just don't think it's the right solution, and I'll tell you why in a second. Do I think it's going to affect them politically? No, I don't. I think it was a masterstroke in that sense. But I don't think it's a masterstroke because it's a good idea. I just think it's a masterstroke because of the way that it can be perceived as a particularly good idea.
Yes.
And I'll tell you why I don't think it's a great idea. In terms of the national insurance increase, yes, the money is supposed to come into the NHS, but we don't know how that money is going to be spent. We talked a little bit about nurses earlier and the 1% increase. I don't believe they'll see one Ayatollah of this money that comes into the NHS, and I don't think it will be utilised in the manner that we would want it to be utilised in. And I speak from the experiences of what's happened previously in terms of where the money is going. And I pick up one headline here, and I'm not a headline grabber, headline story grabber, but from The Guardian just today, long NHS waiting list fuel return to profits at healthcare from fire. And that's just one headline, and it talks about how and where the money is going essentially with regards to contracts. And I think if the money is generally going to be spent within the NHS to develop the NHS, to recruit those nurses, to keep them in the system, to pay for them for their education, to give them bursaries, to fund all of that, so that they fundamentally work in the NHS and they work for the benefit of the patients that we all want to serve, then fantastic. It's a brilliant masterstroke, it's a brilliant idea. But I can't sit here and say that this is where the money is going to go. And that's why I'm a little bit skeptical. And that's why I have to ask the question, where is the money going and who is it going to be serving? And if it's assigned for that reason, for nurses, for doctors' development, for healthcare associates that work for the NHS passionately, for those people who are working in care homes, care settings, if it's going to help with them going through and getting paid a fair wage, then I have no concerns whatsoever. But I just don't think that's going to be the case, and that's where my skepticism comes.
Right, Gary. Before we move on from that one.
No, I think the doctor who is well placed. I think he's addressed that. I don't really want to add anything to that.
Yes, I think he has taken out his scalpel and made a clear incision. Is that the right word, David?
Basically, I've put my flag in the sand. Taking the mantle from Anthony, and I've decided to go full tilt.
well, guys,
and it's only because I'm passionate about the patients that I serve, right? And that's essentially what it boils down to. It's nothing more than that. I have no political aspirations, desire, etc. I just want our patients to be served very well, and I think we could do more to do that. But we need that help, and we need to have a direction and a purpose for where this money is going to be going.
So I think what you're saying.
If I can just add what David is just really quickly. I mean, David, I must also just add. My wife Elizabeth has actually worked as a nurse. She's retired now. Just the last year, she worked for the NHS for 40 years. So we're talking, and I think talking to Elizabeth and her friends. Those individuals who have actually served so well for so long, they're the people who have been the backbone of the NHS. I doubt very much, and I'd like to be proved wrong. I don't think you will get nurses staying in the NHS for 40 years anymore. I think that generation is gone simply because the opportunities, the pay, the conditions are just not there anymore for the young people to come forward. And that's what they need to make it more attractive if they want to attract people like Elizabeth to spend a whole career in the NHS.
And I think that's the point I was trying to make. I agree that the money's got to come in. Don't get me wrong, but I think there are bigger things that need to be solved. And I do wonder about this whole NI increase. I think I've said what I've said.
Okay, well, I hope the government is listening, and I guess what you're saying, if I can capture that, David, is it needs to be more targeted and very clear and transparent at the same time with clear accountability, because it could be that, okay, yes, we get this money now to prop up the coffers, and then just as how they said no new tax, that money which is earmarked for what they said could be spread otherwise when situation comes up. Well, guys, listen, on a final note, David, this is, I guess you have contributed to this. So you must give yourself some clap. Costa gives 5% pay rise to some staff and recruits 2,000 new staff. I guess what we're saying is some new positive shoots, isn't it, guys?
I think so. I think it's great that a company can reward their employees with pay rises or incentives, to try and help again bridge the problems that these not everybody that's getting these pay rises. They're obviously recruited from other places, and so they may have lost their job. They may have lost their job in other areas, and I can see Silvan supporting them quite nicely there as well. So I think it's a credit if the companies can do this, then I don't see why everybody should be able to sort of eat at the table. And this it may well for some people think, oh, it's a small reward, but it's a reward nonetheless. It's a recognition of the efforts of people who want to come into the companies. And I've not seen this particular title, but I'm blown by Costa wanting to do this. I think it's a really good thing. And they're not alone in that regard. There are other companies who give incentives like a day off for your birthday or something along the lines, just to say, look, we're rewarding you as a member of our staff. And it's good that these businesses are able to do that.
Please, I mean, I was gonna say, Seymour, don't. I saw Anthony's head shaking. I said, please, don't get him started. I think he was just about to get ready to blow you out of the water there, Seymour.
Well, that's my regular routine when I go after I do my walk. People in the States sometimes they say, man, you haven't done any more dance, man. We got that coffee machine, But Anthony, on a positive note, I mean, we've been talking about jobs and new developments. People are now getting back into the office. I've seen a program recently where they're talking about people going back into the office now, and then companies, the Cafe Rouge, not the Cafe Rouge, the Pret Manager, they are sort of now looking at some new sort of shoot of light, because that's where they benefit from, especially in the city.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always a positive story when companies are taking on new recruits. It means that there's obviously employment, and especially when you're also then rewarding the staff with a pay rise. It obviously, as David has said, it shows that their efforts have been rewarded. It's been appreciated. So I think from that point of view, it's fantastic. Just as an aside, I do hope that Costa are also paying their manufacturers and their suppliers. Also, sorry, not the manufacturers, but the suppliers of the coffee that they receive. I hope they're also getting a fair increase as well, because don't forget, they are those countries where it comes from, and we know those countries. We can name them off by heart. We hope that they're actually getting a fair crack in terms of what they're being paid for their produce. But in terms of the economy in general, it's very important that it gets back on its feet, and it's very encouraging to see so many people now going back to the office, and some sort of life returning back to the city. Very welcome.
Yeah, because even my office is even talking about having a meeting next week to look at the hybrid getting back into the courts and all those sort of things. Even though there's this little question sign, David, around the Christmas, the December bit, where the Prime Minister said he reserved the right, if anything, to take action if they see any shoot of COVID infection increasing. You were saying something, and who else was saying something there?
I was going to say that I don't know if it was this morning or yesterday on Radio 4 where I heard it. Very interesting that, and as you said, it was alluded to by both the doctor and Anthony about the increase of jobs and such. But according to a report that I heard on Radio 4, they said that amongst the ethnic minorities, it's the jobs availability for the young people are not going up. They're not going up. So I'm really hoping. I've got children. Yes, my oldest is 34. My youngest is 26. He's in Dubai anyway. He's there trying to do something where Bitcoin is concerned. But I'm really hoping that as the economy picks up,
Yes.
that everybody's hoping that it not just bypasses the black
Community.
population, the
Yeah.
young people. I hope it doesn't bypass them, because it would be sad. It would be very sad
Yes.
if all that they're going to be taking on are young, white, up and coming yuppies. They were called
Mm.
yuppies back in the 80s, or
Mm. I did hear a program. I think it was BBC talking about that, and I think a guy named Anderson, a consultant, was talking about the fact that when they are getting jobs in, they have to somewhat look for the people, look for black people, that young black people, to match the jobs to. It's like it's not going to them, or it's somewhat, as you rightly say, it is missing. There's a missing link there, and I think Anthony, you may have sent me something on that. I don't know if you had sent me something on that level there.
Yeah, I did. You need to look back and have a read of that.
Yes, yes, definitely. So we follow that up another time. Anyway, guys, well, listen, want to thank you so much. Sorry.
Just one quick point here.
Yes.
That it's quite funny, because the numbers are going up, and I believe that it has been said. I've read it where the government is that if they need to do a quick sharp, not in these exact words, but if there's a quick sharp lockdown that they have to do in October.
Yes.
Bearing in mind that there is another variant out there. It's not Delta, but it's Wu or MU. I don't know how you pronounce that.
I think it's Wu. Yeah. W.
Is it WU or MU? I don't know. But from what I understand, it's very much it's picking up pace in California. There is someone that I know that has spoken that the variant, that strain is very it's gathering pace there. Now, funnily, nothing has been mentioned here. Probably it hasn't found its way here yet. But even before Delta got here, people were talking about it. But this MU variant doesn't seem to be catching the minds of the politicians at all. But we've got to be mindful of these things. And it's quite strange, really, that the numbers are going up. They're not going down. They're going up, even though slowly. And another lockdown may be
imminent.
And doctor may be able to correct me if I'm wrong on this, or if I'm misleading.
I think we just have to watch this space. It's nice. It's nice to speculate about these things. And yes, we all know that variants will crop up from time to time. This is a virus. This is what they do. But we don't know anything about whether the vaccine is effective against this particular strain or not. But again, I don't expect this not to be the norm going forward. The main thing is that the numbers of people who are vaccinated is steadily increasing as well. Yes, hospitals have increasing numbers of patients within their parameters, but we are doing our best to try and manage the situation, and we'll continue to do so. I'm hopeful that there'll be more effective treatments that come out shortly as well, that are currently under scrutiny. The one thing I will say is that people are responding very well to the treatments and actually being discharged from hospitals as well. So those persons who are taking a vaccine are not succumbing to the infection as much as they were 18 months ago. So I am, you can see I'm a degree of positivity when it comes to all of this. Vaccines working effectively is what I would say, and hold that mantra true.
Okay, guys. Well, listen. I've got some housekeeping to do after this, but I'm gonna release you guys now as well. I think my thing is frozen. Okay, can you see me? Can you guys see me?
Yeah, I was gonna play with you and say no, but it's not. I can't do that now.
I'm sorry.
I was gonna say no. We can't hear you.
All right. Okay. All right, guys. My thing. I'm not seeing anything here, but I do a reset. At the same.
Now he's officially gone.
He's left
the building.
Elvis
has left the building.
Gary, I'll see you again next week. Yeah.
Take care, guys.
Okay.
He came back. Okay, guys. Thank you so much. Have a good one. I'm going to be talking about the White Witch of Roseau because there's a play which has been going on, and I'm just going to plug it for I don't know anybody who knows about the White Witch of Roseau. There's a play in Bloomsburg Theatre, so I'm just going to talk about it after, but I want to release you guys as well. All right, Anthony, thank you
Okay.
so much. Have a good week. Gary,
Okay,
have a
man.
good
God
week.
bless.
Dr. Burton, have a good rest.
Good night.
And peace out.
Thank
All
you.
right.
God bless you. Bless you. Bless you.
Cheers, guys. Thank you. Okay, guys. Listen, I want to thank you so much, and those on Instagram, Facebook, thank you so much for coming on today. What I want to talk about just briefly here is that this, okay, it covers myself, but there's a play which is going on, the White Witch of Roseau. Yes, White Witch. Anybody who's familiar with Jamaica know the history or talk about this great house. Yeah, and it's based on the real life Annie Palmer, the story of love. Let me take off this picture here. The story of love, cruelty, and revenge cast against the backdrop of the Atlantic slave trade in the 18th century Jamaica. It is written by Barry Record, directed by Joseph Charles, and at Bloomsbury Theatre from the 7th to the 18th of September. So that's where it's going to be. This Sunday night at 9 p.m., I'm going to be interviewing Mr. Joseph Charles, who is the director of the play. And if I read a bit further, White Witch tells the story of a white woman who falls in love with a black man, and of the terrible consequences of their forbidden affair set around the Roseau, Jamaica, against the backdrop of the 18th century slave trade. The play follows Annie Palmer, who has been married off to a plantation owner following her scandalous affair with a black man. Incensed by the death of her lover and her own brutal treatment, she rebels against her marriage, and a string of vengeful murders create murmurs about witchcraft. Yeah. So anybody who knows about that, that's going to be this Sunday night at 9 p.m. For those on Instagram and Facebook, I think a couple of persons messaged me saying they couldn't see anybody. Well, actually, what I do with the Instagram is just put the phone up there and you can watch. But in order to watch the show and to watch even the interview, which came on earlier tonight, one has got to go to YouTube or Facebook and to watch all of it. Yep. And so tune in this Sunday night at 9 p.m. where I'll be interviewing Mr. Joseph Charles. Let me just get it right. Joseph Charles for that. And also, this Saturday night, I always try to give that a plug as well. This Saturday night, I'll have Talk and Sip. Talk and Sip is where we have a very lively and bubbly discussion on Instagram. This is exclusively on Instagram. You can join us. We'll have O'Neill, who is from the States, Vita from the States, Jody from Jamaica, Lester Gaza as well. And we have a very interesting show. And there it is, Saturday, 11th of September, 2021, 10 p.m. UK time, every Saturday night, Instagram Live. And the key thing about this show is that you got to just say what you are drinking. All right? You want to be drinking something. I don't have to be alcohol, it's got to be something in your hand. And therefore, we have different topics that we talk about as well. So, without further ado, I want to wish you a good night and take care of yourself on this beautiful, wonderful September evening. And as we lead towards the anniversary of September 11th, let it also be a reflective moment and a reflective time as well. Okay? Remember to like and subscribe to the show, Silver TV on YouTube, on Facebook as well. Hey Vita, how are you? And Anil, boom. Hope you guys are well. Awesome. So I'm gonna sign off here now on Facebook and YouTube. Okay, bye-bye.